So let's get this going, and let's play Lock It In for NFL Super Wildcard Weekend. Welcome to Lock It In, where I give all my picks for the football slate of games that we have for the weekend and Monday night ahead. Today, we will be beginning with tomorrow's slate of games. We got two on the schedule tomorrow. 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Two huge matchups and two huge games. To kick off our Super Wildcard Weekend, we've got the 11-6 Browns traveling to the 10-7 Houston Texans, NRG Stadium. C.J. Stroud has led them to this point, and Joe Flacco has led the Browns to this point. A vet and a rookie will face off in a winner-takes-all. The Houston Texans might have the Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year after returning to the playoffs for the first time since 2019. And in the wild card round, they will host the Cleveland Browns, who might have the best defense in the NFL. The Browns finished the season with 4 games that they took down their opponents to win in this streak before resting their starters in the regular season finale. They're making their return to the postseason since 2020. And this season, DeMeco Ryans has led his team to their first AFC South title behind C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., both first-round picks from this previous draft. Joe Flacco, a guy who was sitting on his couch just a few months ago, joined the Browns after the team went through a series of injuries to the quarterbacks, and with him, they've captured this wild card berth. Well, right now, it looks like the Browns are the favorites to defeat the Texans in NRG Stadium in Houston under their fans. So, now it's time for me to give my pick. This is a massive game, all right? And either team can take this victory. But the reason for my pick is as follows. It has to go with trajectory. And it has to go with what the world is saying. And usually I bet against the world. And today, with this game, I will be betting against the world. The Houston Texans and young rookie C.J. Stroud will make it to the divisional round after defeating veteran Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns. At home, NRG Stadium will be popping. All right, if you thought Lucas Oil Stadium was loud, C.J. Stroud, your entire house will be even louder, rooting for you in this massive game where, honestly, he's playing with house money because he's proved a hell of a lot coming into this wildcard game as just his first season. This is his first playoff experience in the NFL. This is going to be a new environment for C.J. Stroud, and I think he's the type of player that performs incredible under the pressure, that doesn't let the pressure shrink him, but rather he expands to what he needs to become. And with that, I am going with the Houston Texans. Lock it in. Next game on the schedule for tomorrow, 8:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This game's going to be on Peacock. The 11-6 Dolphins travel to Arrowhead to face off against the 11-6 Chiefs. This is no doubt one of the biggest matchups of this wild card and maybe even of the playoffs. And it is going to be ugly in Kansas City tomorrow. It is supposed to be ugly starting tonight. The wind chills are going to be in the below 0 degrees. It's going to be freezing for a Miami team that's coming in after they just faced 75-degree weather in Miami over there. It is going to be brutal for these guys to be out there and play. If you ask me, the Dolphins should have been practicing there all week. Now they're going to be traveling to Arrowhead, where the Chiefs are used to these conditions. The Dolphins, not so much. I know that the Dolphins' record in poor conditions is actually quite rough. And I also know what the Chiefs are capable of. And I know that even despite this rough season, they are still trying to rebuild and build this dynasty that they looked as like they were forming not too long ago. It looks like they've fallen off the dynasty wagon just a bit this year. Some distractions potentially have gotten in the way, aka Taylor Swift. No disrespect, but definitely a big distractor for this Chiefs team and for Travis Kelce, no matter what you want to say. That was a big headline that may have broken them a little bit. And then, of course, injuries, and they've been unlucky. But for the Dolphins side as well, injuries have plagued them left and right and gotten them to the point they were at right now. They finished pretty disappointing in their regular season, unable to get the job done when it truly mattered. And this is a huge game for Tyreek Hill, right? Coming in to the Chiefs' kingdom, his former home, playing against his former head coach and his former quarterback, trying to prove something, trying to prove that now he is the best and that he made the decision and it worked out well for him, because last time this matchup went down, the Chiefs took the victory. So now this is a lot riding on Tyreek Hill as well. And to me, this doesn't even seem like the Dolphins are facing off against Kansas City. They are facing off against themselves. They are facing off against the fact that they have beaten themselves week after week after week. They've got tons of talent and a decent head coach who seems to have earned the respect of his players and of the league. And even though he's quirky and he's different, he's gotten the job done when it mattered and brought them to this point in general. So now it's really like the Miami Dolphins are facing themselves in the mirror and need to play a clean game here. And it is going to be brutal weather. It is not going to be fun, with wind chills expected to be below 0 degrees. The coldest game in franchise history likely to be for Kansas City. It's going to be an up and down roller coaster. We'd be lucky to see high points on the board. I think this is going to be a dogfight and a low-scoring dogfight. And the team that prepared the best, the team that wants it more, is obviously going to take this one. So yes, the Dolphins have a rough history with cold weather games, and they already lost to the Chiefs this season in Germany. But there is some good news, as I mentioned. You're going to have a highly motivated Tua and a highly motivated Tyreek, who are making, well, Tua is just kind of there for the ride, but Tyreek is making his long-awaited return to KC after spending 6 seasons with the Chiefs, and running back Raheem Mostert and receiver Jalen Waddle could return to give Mike McDaniel's offense its full complement of weapons. There's no doubt here that the Dolphins are an incredibly talented team. But the Chiefs are just as equally talented and maybe even a bit more talented. They certainly have the upper hand on quarterback, and I believe they also have the upper hand on running back when Isaiah Pacheco is healthy, and I believe he will be playing tomorrow night. So this could be an either-way game, and this is going to probably be a low-scoring game. But because of the weather conditions, because it is in Arrowhead, I will be going with the Kansas City Chiefs. Lock it in. Now let's move on to Sunday. We've got 3 games for the Sunday slate. January 14th, our first of the afternoon Sunday will be 1 p.m. The 10-7 Steelers travel to the 11-6 Bills. The Bills are red hot right now. They've come off of a phenomenal win in clinching the AFC East this past weekend. And they also have the luck of not facing linebacker TJ Watt, who was actually injured last weekend and is out this week with an MCL sprain. So this is a huge breakthrough for the Buffalo Bills, because we know what the Watt brothers are capable of, especially TJ Watt. But this team, without a doubt, has been led by quarterback Josh Allen, who has just proven that he is continuing to be a legend in this league. 4,306 yards, 29 touchdowns. He's completed 66.5% of his passes. He was picked off 18 times, but had a rating of 92.2. He's also the second on the team in rushing, who he carried 111 times for 524 yards and 15 touchdowns. And in last week's win over the Dolphins, he had a phenomenal game. 359 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this team is red hot offensively, and it is just going to be even more of a moment for them without having to face defender TJ Watt, who is a stud in himself. And what's interesting to note here is that without TJ Watt, who's a first-team All-Pro and the 2021 NFL Defensive Player of the Year, without him, Pittsburgh is 1-10 since drafting him in 2017. And without a doubt, one of the players who's going to benefit most is James Cook, Bills running back. He is going to have a massive game because he has an opening. He carried 237 times for 1,122 yards and 2 touchdowns this season. And he has 6 explosive plays of 20 or more yards, including a season-high 42-yard run. With TJ Watt, that probably gets cut down, but them not having him is a major loss. And whoever is the replacement there is no replacement to what TJ Watt is capable of. And this is going to be a huge breakthrough for the Bills offense that they have to take advantage of. But I'm not going to tell you that the Steelers can't cover this win, because they absolutely can. Mason Rudolph is expected to get the start for Pittsburgh, and we know that there's been a whole quarterback roulette in Pittsburgh. We've gone through the ringer with all the guys. In last week's 17-10 win over the Ravens, obviously the Ravens sat their starters. It was raining, terrible weather. Mason Rudolph completed 18 of 20 passes for 152 yards and 1 touchdown. The week before, he was also effective, winning by 7. At Seattle, he completed 18 of 24 passes for 274 yards. And he's had the highest completion percentage in the NFL over the past 3 weeks. So, by no means possible am I saying that the Steelers are going to get blown out in this game. I think that obviously the Bills are more talented, but based on this information, they can absolutely hold their own. He's also the first Pittsburgh quarterback since 1970 with 700 or more passing yards, 10-plus yards per attempt, and 0 interceptions in a 3-game span. Now, they're obviously going to need to use their ground attack. Najee Harris has to be the guy they rely on. He's a third-year vet, and he surpassed 1,000 yards in each of his seasons in Pittsburgh. He's rushed for over 100 yards in each of the last 2 weeks, so he is hot as well. And this has to be a Najee Harris-type game. I think we will see the run game utilized a ton within these teams, because you've got James Cook, who now has an opening because there is no TJ Watt, but you also have Najee Harris, who's capable of incredible things and can absolutely run past the Bills defense here if he can take it and run with it, literally take it and run with it. So I think we're going to see a lot of ground attack from both of these teams, but certainly the Steelers, who are going to run with ground attack, because Mason Rudolph, if you can rely on Najee Harris, you would like to rely on Najee Harris in this game. This is going to be a dogfight. I think one team in the end, maybe come second half of this game, will roll away with this dogfight. And for me, that team just has to be the Buffalo Bills. At home, I don't think it's supposed to be beautiful weather in Buffalo either, as it stands. It never is. That's Buffalo Bills type football, and Buffalo's been made for that. And those guys are made for the snowstorm grit games where you can't feel your hands and you can't feel your feet, and you go out there and you play every single drive and you make snow angels, and it's a phenomenal time. And not every team is made for that, but that is Buffalo football. They had a moment, and they had a possible decision to put a dome over their stadium. They decided not to. Why? Because that's the way Buffalo football is played. And regardless of how Mason Rudolph and the team can come out, losing TJ Watt this week is a massive loss. So with all that being said, I'm rolling with the Buffalo Bills. Lock it in. The next matchup of Sunday is the 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game. The 9-8 Packers will travel to the 12-5 Cowboys. Talked about this one briefly at the beginning of the show. The Packers is a very young team. They're a very young team under a young head coach. And the fact that they've gotten to this point to finish with the winning record in itself seems like a miracle, and seems like they've already come into this game playing with house money. And for the Cowboys, this is massive pressure. Massive pressure being put on the Cowboys because of their inconsistencies this year. Now, most of those inconsistencies came from them playing on the road. As we know, they've been known as the frauds of the road who cannot win a game on the road but dominate at home. And obviously, this game is at home. Dak Prescott is Dak Prescott. He's an MVP favorite. Micah Parsons, who we discussed at the beginning of the show, All-Pro, no doubt about that. Dan Quinn, incredible talent in the defensive side of things. And then Mike McCarthy, who's got a ton to prove. And it seems like every single year he has had to prove that he belongs in Dallas. Not to mention, this is a revenge game for Mike McCarthy himself. Simply putting it, because we know how it went with the Packers. They didn't want him no more, and they sent him out the door, and Matt LaFleur was the replacement. And that was how things went. And so for this game, maybe Mike McCarthy's not necessarily thinking about that, in the sense that all that matters in his mind right now is moving on to the divisional round, right? But still, huge game for McCarthy, huge game for Jordan Love, who has proven himself all year and had struggles here and there, but has gotten hot when it mattered, and he needs to stay hot now. What we do know is that Jair Alexander actually rolled his ankle in practice this week. It says that he stepped on a teammate's foot during walkthroughs and rolled his ankle, but it is said that he is expected to be okay, expected to play. Obviously, that'd be a huge loss for the Packers defense if he cannot play. With a defensive coordinator like Dan Quinn, who always has tricks up his sleeve and has players who have massive talent, as the Packers, you need to utilize your run game. And if Aaron Jones is healthy, and if he is able to produce, give him the ball. Give him the ball. Because we've seen time and time again this year with the Packers receivers that sometimes they're not reliable. Christian Watson was not a starter much this year. He's been dealing with injuries, and it has hurt the team. Romeo Doubs went down last week with a chest injury. That hurt the team. You only have really a couple of guys that you can name if you're a Packers fan where you're like, yeah, I think they could catch a ball. And that has been the problem all year, is that Jordan Love doesn't have many weapons. And when he does have weapons, they're quite average. You don't have a Devontae Adams receiver on your roster right now as the Green Bay Packers. And as a young quarterback, a Devontae Adams receiver would definitely help a lot. But Jordan Love doesn't have that, but he's still somehow managed to make things happen. And so whatever they've done this year, whatever they did to hold on against the Bears has to come in to this game. You got to play clean football, you got to play efficient football, and you got to run the ball. Give it to the best player on your team, Aaron Jones. Give it to him and let him run with it. And you know what? When the Cowboys are able to catch up to the run and finally stop it, that's when you stun them. That's when you show them what Jordan Love is capable of and let him use his arm. I am a huge Packers fan, and my decision might be a bit biased in my pick. But what I want to tell you is that this Packers team are underdogs all around the world right now. And they have not always been underdogs with Aaron Rodgers behind them. They were always the favorites, right? And now Jordan Love has the motivation to become a star. He's already exceeded my expectations and the world's expectations. And probably everybody watching football who understands what's going on's expectations. And the Cowboys are dominant at home. That's their track record. So for that reason alone, I'm going against the track record, picking the Green Bay Packers to upset the Cowboys in an astounding fashion, coming down to the final moments of the game. Jordan Love is going to be the star that we speak about next week. Green Bay Packers win this game. Lock it in. Our final weekend game will be Sunday night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 10-7 Rams travel to Ford Field to face off against the 12-5 Lions. This is another massive matchup for so many reasons. Matt Stafford returns to Detroit, but this time as the enemy. Jared Goff has a chance to prove that he is just as good as his replacement is in LA, and that he can make something happen. We know that Stafford and the Rams have already won a Super Bowl. We know Jared Goff has not had that type of success yet in Detroit. But what I can tell you is that they're hungry for it. Dan Campbell wants this. The team needs this. And that is what matters in the grand scheme of things. This is a game of preparation, but also a game of heart and what team wants it more. And I'm not saying the Rams don't want it. No way am I saying the Rams don't want it. That would be a foolish thing to say. But the Lions have a different feel and energy about them, and it all starts with the head coach, Dan Campbell, who I love. I absolutely admire how he coaches his team and his energy and what he says and his mentality for things. And I really I love the Lions here. I really do. We already went into depth with this matchup earlier this week. That's why I'm not doing a whole rundown of it. And we know. This is a reunion game. This is the Stafford family returning to Detroit, the city that raised Matt Stafford in this league. And he's the enemy. And at the same stretch of things here, this is a massive trade, a blockbuster trade that we saw a few seasons ago, where Jared Goff, Matt Stafford switched sides. Right? So this is also a huge game for Jared Goff that I think a lot of people are overlooking because he is playing against his former home. Obviously, he's in his new home at Ford Field this weekend, but he has still got a lot riding on this, and he's still I'm sure, has a ton to prove. Because right now, you ask me, obviously Matt Stafford won that trade. He's already got a Super Bowl under his belt. He's already hoisted up the Lombardi Trophy once since switching to the Rams side. So now, if anything, Jared Goff wants this more than anyone on the field. And a lot of people haven't talked about that side of the game. We all talk about Matt Stafford returning. Oh, he's returning. How are the fans going to react? The fans are going to back up their quarterback, Jared Goff, because now it's their turn. And for that reason alone, I am picking the Detroit Lions to win this game. Lock it in. The final game of the Super Wildcard slate is Monday night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the 11-6 Eagles travel to Raymond James Stadium to face off against the 9-8 Buccaneers. And what more can I say except the Eagles are disappointing? They have been disappointing ever since Jalen Hurts had the flu and lost to the Seattle Seahawks. And they have not picked themselves up again since then. Something has changed within Jalen Hurts and that entire team, and it has not been pretty, to say the least. There's been a lot of speculation about Nick Sirianni as a coach, and as does he have the respect of his team anymore. A.J. Brown, we saw last week, clarified the issue, saying, it's on the players, it's not on Nick Sirianni, but that's what you get with the job. You take the blame as head coach. There's something about these Eagles. Every single week, I've said this was the week that they were going to come back. The embarrassment and motivation from losing against terrible teams, the Cardinals, the Giants, should have been enough to propel them to future victories the week after. But they just fell deeper and deeper into a hole of injuries and failure and mistakes and anger and tension. And it has not lit up. And it has not gotten better. And it seems like they're stuck in a tunnel right now, and the light is very far away. And why am I supposed to believe that coming off of a loss against the Giants in their final week of the league, the final week of the regular season, that now's the chance for them to turn things around? I've said that every single week since they've lost, that this upcoming one was where they were going to turn things around, that it was finally going to snap into them, and the embarrassment of losing to these low-level teams was finally going to pound them and say, guys, let's wake up and play football like we know how we can. Still an incredibly talented team, but I just don't believe that this is their moment. And for that very reason, I am picking the Baker Mayfield-led Buccaneers. Lock it in.